that Allah will provide them ways out of difficulty in this world. And the hereafter, إِنَّ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ مَفَازًا, they have the great reward from Allah Ta'ala, the great success. So taqwa is actually attained through the month of Ramadan. So the Sahaba, when Ramadan would end, they would make dua that this was accepted. Why? Because if it's accepted, then it would build on their opportunity to attain taqwa and gain the pleasure of Allah Ta'ala. And then they would make dua half a year before Ramadan came to allow them to see Ramadan. Why? Because in Ramadan, something special occurs. In the hadith narrated by Ibn Khuzaymah and Ibn Hibban and others, that we know that shaitan is locked up in that month. So one of our greatest obstacles to get close to Allah is now taken out of our lives. And when shaitan is taken out of our lives, then the nafs, it's easier to control. And because there's a communal effort to control the nafs, everyone's fasting, people are speaking less, they're reciting Quran more, etc. The nafs gets in more control, and we see the potential that we have. You know, it's interesting, in physics, there's this concept. I have nothing to do with physics, but I just know this concept. There's kinetic energy and there's potential energy. Potential energy is like when you pull a swing back, right before you let it go, that's the potential energy. It has this potential to swing forward. Kinetic energy is when it comes to fruition. The believers, we all have potential energy. And I was actually telling some of my classes today that our potential energy is so amazing. Sometimes when push comes to shove, you see people who do things no human thought was possible. For example, we see that woman, in the many articles like this that exist out there, you know, a child comes under a car, no one's able to lift the car, 2-3 men are trying to lift it, no one can do it. All of a sudden, here comes a mother who hears the cry, the adrenaline pumps through her, she lifts the car, the men pull the child out. Potential energy became kinetic energy. Spiritually, that's true as well. Things we thought were impossible, in the month of Ramadan, we see become possible. So I was mentioned as a parent in this school. I used to teach in the school years back. I taught here in 2002 till 2004. Then I left, then I came back. So when I used to teach here, there were other parents before. SubhanAllah, I was just telling one of my students in 6th grade that, you know, I taught your mother when she was in high school. That's how old I am, right? I taught your mother when I was in high school. So, you know, you see families come and go. So one family, there was a daughter she's the age of my son, same grade. Doesn't go here anymore. Her mother was friends with my wife. So my wife told me that she really wanted to maximize in Ramadan. She really wanted to maximize the month of Ramadan. And so in the month of Ramadan, she made an intention. And subhanAllah, the power of intention. What's intention in the Arabic language? Niyyah. وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. Everyone will get what they intended. Nawa, what he intended, also in the Arabic language refers to what? Like an atom. Like the power that comes from the atom. It's very powerful, but it's hidden. But when you untap it, it's crazy power. So she made an intention. What was her intention? She wasn't hafidha. She was not hafidha. She made the intention that this Ramadan, I am going to read one Quran a day. She made that intention. She was expecting at that point with her second daughter. And so she was in a situation where she could read Quran every day. Now what's interesting, people when they hear this, they say, Astaghfirullah, brother, don't you know the Prophet ﷺ, he prohibited for us from reading Quran in less than 3 days. First of all, we have to understand usul when we comment on hadith and fiqh. Sometimes there's commands in the command form that are imperative, they're wajib, you have to do it. Sometimes they're al-istihbab, they're recommendations, they're not wajib, you don't have to do it. Sometimes there are prohibitions that are absolutely necessary, you cannot do that act. And sometimes the prohibition is upon the recommendation because people are incapable to do without tiring themselves out or something else will happen. You have to go to the reading of the scholars. That's when people come to these conclusions, you can't come to these conclusions on your own. Well, brother, why not? Quran and hadith can be accessed by everyone, 100%. If you have the key. Without the key, it cannot be accessed. Without the requisite knowledge, like Imam Shafi'i, rahmatullah alayhi, who had 17 years of just studying Arabic and Arabic grammar, then you can unlock all of these things. So the prohibition to finish Quran in less than 3 days is upon the recommendation. For the vast majority of people, they should not do so. Why? Because they'll rush through it or they won't understand it properly. But people of piety have historically, since the time of the companions, completed Quran in less than that time. So anyway, she made that intention. And the first day she struggled, and she struggled, and she struggled. But by the time, before suhoor time, she was able to finish one Quran. But now she's tired. The second day she pushed, she finished the Quran. The third day she was tired, she pushed, she completed the Quran. Fourth, fifth, now she got into a routine. 6th, 7th, 10th, 20th, 29 or 30 days that month. She read the entire Quran. She's someone not much younger than me. Not much younger than me. I'm not talking about someone who in the time of of Imam Nawawi rahmatullah alayhi or something. I'm talking about someone in our time who comes and visits this masjid still. Read the entire Quran daily in the month of Ramadan. So that made me think, I've heard stories and read stories about people of the past who used to engage in worship in Ramadan. That almost seems superhuman. So when you go and access the readings of the writings about Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi, who had finished 62 Quran in Ramadan, a person begins to wonder, is this even possible? How is it possible? So I was speaking to a scholar about this. And he said, you know what, my own teacher, he was telling me, my own teacher, who's still alive today, who lives in Canada, he does one Quran a day in Ramadan. And I've actually met his teacher because he visited Chicago and gave a few talks. And so I was still surprised by this. And so that teacher gave indication to his teacher's teacher. He gave ishara, read some of his books. So that's what I'm going to speak to you about today. I'm going to speak to you about people who some of you may have met, and if you have not met them, some of your elders have met them. Some of you may have met them. If you did not meet them, some of your elders met them. Meaning that this is not centuries ago. This is not a different millennia. This is a time in which people that we know have met these individuals. And this is number one, not to make us feel bad. Oh, they did this much, I can't do that much. No. This is to make us understand that, subhanAllah, they were humans at the latter parts of this world, the latter stages of time, just as we are. And they were exposed to many of the trials and tribulations, just as we are. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted their intention, and they made effort upon themselves and slowly built themselves up to a point where they were able to achieve such feats in Ramadan, and it should make us wonder, what am I capable of achieving? What am I capable of achieving? I'm going to give you a non-Ramadan story from my own life, not about me, from my own life. One of my teachers, Maulana Hikmatullah, Hafidhullah, he's my Sahih Bukhari teacher. So he had given us advice in our final year of hadith. He told us that, look, between classes, the teachers, they come in and out. Sometimes they're delayed. Sometimes they're teaching longer elsewhere. Open up a mushaf and just read. Just read. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, sometimes only 1 minute between teachers coming in and out of class. Just read. Okay, fine. He told us to do this. Our class began to read. This is our final year of madrasa. At the end of the year, our principal, Maulana Yusuf, Hafidhullah, he came and he was just giving us advice before graduating. And then he asked us a question. He wanted us all to go around the room and say, how many khatam of Quran do we do this year? This year, how many khatam of Quran do you want to do? And one of the things he wanted to prove to us is that, look, just because you're a student of knowledge, just because you study other books, doesn't mean you let go of Quran. But he didn't know the advice our Shaykh Hadith had given us. So we were sort of prepared for this. So he came to me that year, alhamdulillah, this is no boasting, and it's not really that great, but just between the classes, I was able to do 6.5 khatam of Quran. Just between waiting for classes to start. I thought that was amazing. I thought, like, I'm the man. Like, this is what I did. And then they came to Maulana Imran in my class. Maulana Imran, who is younger than me, he is about 12 years younger than I am. Very bright student. Just between the time for one teacher to the next to come to class. Can anyone guess how many khatam he did? 32. 32 khatam of Quran. Just the time in between when one teacher left and one teacher came, throughout the course of the 10 months or 11 months of our madrasa academic year, we get Ramadan off, the 11 months of the madrasa academic year, he did just the time between the teacher coming and going. Was what? 32 or 33 khatam of Quran. And what I learned from that was when the teacher would leave, often I would, what happens when the teacher leaves, because you're only allowed to sit like this in madrasa. You can only sit like this. If your feet start hurting, you can do this. If your feet really start hurting, you can somehow get this off. And if it's really bad, you're allowed to put up one knee. But then you have to be careful. I've seen 20-year-olds get kicked out of class for sitting. You don't have to change how you're sitting. I'm just giving you an example. For sitting cross-legged in madrasa, I've seen students get kicked out of class. It's disrespectful to hadith. So when the teacher left, I would always immediately sit down like this and begin to rub my knees.
I'm bored.
Okay, then just sit in the back and take a nap, okay?
But I'm bored.
Okay, I'm almost done. Only 15 more minutes, I'm done.
But why?
I have to do this,
okay? Okay.
Yeah. I would do this, and then a few moments of that, I'd take out my Quran. I noticed with him, he didn't do that. The moment the teacher left, he would open up his Quran or open up his hadith book and begin to just study some things. Meaning he didn't waste time. And when he didn't waste that gift of Allah, then Allah didn't let any of those moments get wasted. So the time that he spent and I spent were the same time. But the barakah Allah put in there made that time stretch so much more for him. Okay. So much more for him than it did for me. And I think he's much more deserving of that anyway. So what's my point? No one should think it's only 24 hours. They should think that the Lord that took the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, asra bi abdihi layla min al-masjid al-haram al-masjid al-aqsa, when we see that verse, subhanalladhi asra bi abdihi. Asra means to take someone on a night journey, not just a journey. On a journey at night, but then Allah says laylan. Why repeat laylan when asra is used? Because what does it do? It makes a person know it's a small part of the night. And then there's other narrations, the bedding was still warm, etc. It was a small portion. But the Prophet ﷺ, Allah, He controls time. This is the Prophet told us, La tasubbudik. Do not curse out, because so the Prophet told us that Allah said, La tasubbudik. Do not curse out the rooster. Why? Because it calls people to Fajr, etc. And then in another narration, do not curse out time. Why? Because ana dahr, I am timing. I am the Lord of time. I control all of time. So the same Lord who allows some people and they're doing work like, oh my God, the day's over already, is the same Lord who makes for some people this extended time. But how do we access that? Number one, we have to make intention. And number two, we have to do those things that prevent us from benefiting. We have to remove them from our lives. Sometimes it's not that we're doing anything wrong. It's just that we're not doing the most praiseworthy thing at that moment. And then what happens, like these little holes are plucked into this basin of time, and our time trickles away. It just trickles away. Students on their computer studying, where did all the time go? Well, it went through YouTube half the time. All the barakah left. Other people, they're studying like, oh, I have, you ever take those afternoon naps where you take a nap and you wake up, what time is it? It's only 10 minutes have passed. We feel like you slept hours. That's what Allah puts that barakah there. So there's a couple of stories I want to share. There's a whole book about this. I'm going to tell you the title of the book right now. The book is called, so one of the books I'm reading from is called, and I have the book at home, and I just couldn't grab it. I should have grabbed it before I left. The Ramadaan. Scrolling up. Okay. The Ramadaan of Shaykh al-Hadith, Muhammad Zakaria rahmatullah alayhi, and our elders. Muhammad Zakaria rahmatullah alayhi was a scholar who was very, very qualified. He wrote an amazing sharh, amazing explanation of the Muwatta of Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi. Some people say, look, he has his book Fadal A'mal, there are things there that are not believable. First of all, we should recognize that when a scholar writes, they have different levels of writing. Some levels of writing are purely academic. Some levels of writing are purely to motivate people, and some are a mix. Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayhi had a purely academic writing. What do we call it? We call it the Sahih of Imam Bukhari, although it has a longer name. And he had another one that was more for targheeb purposes, to motivate and encourage people. That's what Adab al-Mufrad. There are weak hadith in Abu Adab al-Mufrad that no one ever believed Imam Bukhari would use a weak hadith, but he did so in context. Why? Because that he's not trying to prove rulings, etc. What is he trying to do? He's trying to encourage people. So Mu'azzak rahmatullah alayhi, when he, for example, writes his commentary in Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi's Muwatta, he doesn't use things that have less, they may not have as strong of a chain. And when he's encouraging people, as is within usul, within our derivative knowledge, you're allowed to do that when you have another purpose. So his Ramadan is very interesting. His Ramadan is very interesting. Hazrat Rampuri rahmatullah alayhi, he mentions, and he was very close to Mawlana Zakaria rahmatullah alayhi. Mawlana Zakaria, he used to keep a strict schedule in Ramadan. It was very strict. He and a lot of our elders, like Mawlana Raipuri rahmatullah alayhi, and others, they would, Ramadan would be a different world for them. Normally they would teach in madrasa, no more instruction. No more instruction in Ramadan. Normally they would meet people and advise, no more of that in Ramadan. Normally they would go and tender letters and write responses, no more of that in Ramadan. Because Ramadan, that is the spiritual gas station. What happens if what we do in Ramadan is a very social event for us. Ramadan was not meant to be social. We have iftar party after iftar party after iftar party. Then what happens? We go to iftar party, so we don't pray maghrib in the masjid. Then we don't pray maghrib in the masjid, then we talk with people. A lot of time is wasted. Sometimes backbiting occurs. Then we overeat, that it's hard to go to Isha. We make it to Isha Taraweeh prayer. 4th rakah, we have to be in the restroom. We miss 4 rakahs there. These things, it catches up. I'm not putting anyone down. I am guilty of even much worse things. I'm not judging anyone over here. But what I'm saying is those who took this seriously, they really felt that this month, every moment of time has to be maximized. Not, okay, you know what, I'll cut my Netflix down to only 1 hour a day. Well, it's for some, that's an accomplishment, alhamdulillah. But they felt nothing can come over here. Nothing can come here. Because لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, I can gain Allah's pleasure and be gifted taqwa and then grow closer to Allah and have a newly enjoyed, a new taste of enjoyment of this world and then gain pleasure in the hereafter. So he had a very strict schedule. Hazrat Rampur rahmatullah alayhi, he mentions, I came to visit him. And I was told by some of his students that don't come visit now because he doesn't see people at this time. But he said, no, I just want to say salam. I'm a friend of his. I said, okay, try to come before Dhuhr. You can maybe catch him on his way to the masjid. So I said, I came to Dhuhr. First of all, he tried to come at different times and Mawlana Zakaria was not available. He came at different times earlier. Mawlana Zakaria was not available. He'd go into his room, he'd close the door, he'd begin to reading. I'm going to explain why. He'd begin to continue his reading and start engaging in Quran. I'll explain why in a moment. So what happened was he missed him. And he missed him again, and he missed him again. So finally, they said, come on the way to Dhuhr. I said, okay, fine. So, on the way to Dhuhr, he was held up. Mawlana Zakaria already came to the masjid. He was engaged in his sunnah. When he was engaged in his sunnah, so he's waiting for him. He finishes the sunnah, iqamah is called. He starts to walk to the prayer. They can't talk then. So after the prayer, what happens is that when he finishes the prayer, he engages in dhikr. So he's waiting. Now he engages in his sunnah. He's waiting. So then he stands to pray sunnah. He finishes sunnah. Mawlana Zakaria finished the sunnah already. He left his room. So now he's trying to catch up. He's all in his room. He's in his room. And then he says a very interesting thing. He says, look, let me just call to him. I'm not going to go meet him. I said, fine, call to him. So he calls him and says, oh, Hazrat, meaning noble person, noble dear person, Hazrat, Ramadan comes to everyone, but for you it hits like a fever. You know when you get a fever, you can't just say, oh, it's basketball time and put my fever aside. Oh, it's time for work, I'll put my fever aside. The fever hits you, it encompasses you, it decides when it will leave you, and it completely envelops you. Now, why was Mawlana Zakaria rahmatullah alayhi like this? Because one day, it's written over here, he said that I had read about Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi. I read that he would finish 60 recitations of Quran. 60 recitations. So I thought to myself, and he said, I told my friends before Ramadan, why don't this year we try? Now this is the first point I want to make. The first point is, have lofty but attainable goals. Don't say this Ramadan, I'm going to read 100 Quran. It's not attainable. It's too lofty. And then what happens, the person gets discouraged. But don't tell yourself only I'm going to read one Quran this Ramadan. Unless that's something that really you feel like you have to work hard for. You know yourself. I'm nothing special, so I'm not going to make any claims. But some of you actually read Quran very daily, and one khatam is not going to be that much for you. Knowing yourself, let's say last Ramadan, you pushed to finish one Quran. Fine. This Ramadan, you've pushed to finish 1.5. Last Ramadan, you pushed to do 2 Qurans. This Ramadan, do 2.25. Take the expectation and raise the bar. Have azima within our efforts in Ramadan. We should have a goal. Some people make the goal in Ramadan, I'm not going to miss any prayer in the masjid. Some people, they achieve that anyway. So what should be your attention? This Ramadan, I'm not going to miss any takbiratul ula, the first takbir in the masjid. See what the previous Ramadan was, and now raise the bar. Because the bar is always the same, then we're never improving. But if from this Ramadan I read half a Quran, next Ramadan I'm going to aim for 1 Quran. This Ramadan I reached 1 Quran, the next Ramadan I'm going to aim for 1.5 Quran. And we keep raising the bar. It's like when a person lifts weights. They don't say I can only lift 20 pounds, they lift 20 pounds forever. There's no improvement. You want to make gains, what do? You begin to add weight. And when you add weight, it doesn't come easy. You struggle. It's hard. We lose our breath. We lose some motivation, but then we plateau and then we hit that peak and we move on. And that's what everyone does. Anything everyone does, when we push ourselves a little more, then it becomes easier. So Mawlana Zakariya, he sat with his friends and he said, I've read about our elders that some would read 60 Quran in Ramadan. Let's make this intention. So they made the intention. And he writes, some of us we reached 53. Some of us we reached 55. Some of us were able to do even more than 60. Now, I'm not saying to read 2 Quran a day. What I'm saying is, now let's connect this back to the initial story. How did they reach this? Once he knew this was his goal, he couldn't then say, I'm going to go speak to everyone who wants to talk to me, and I'm going to read everyone's letters, i.e. for us emails, etc. With this goal, it requires this dedication. With this goal, it requires this dedication. With this goal, it requires this dedication. If my goal is to read 1 page of Quran a day, then my dedication has to be equal to that. If my goal is to read 1 Quran a day, my dedication has to be equal to that. So now the second thing that we have to do is set our schedule for Ramadan in accordance to what our goals are. In accordance to what our goals are. If someone's goal is to read 1 Quran a day, I am very sorry, you cannot attend an iftar party. You can't. And just be honest with yourself, you can't. And it's okay to miss an iftar party. If someone's goal is to donate every day, then I'm very sorry, you have to be in the masjid every day. Why? Because the easiest ability to donate is in the masjid. There's a donation box. Often people in need come to the masjid in Ramadan. At home, maybe you could access the internet, and that's an opportunity now today. But most people need that physical ability to give. No one can say, I'm not going to go to the masjid, I'm going to give money every day. It's going to be too difficult. You have to set your schedule in accordance. If someone says, for example, my goal this Ramadan is I'm not going to engage, for example, in watching any streaming services, fine. But I'm sorry, you cannot have your house arranged the same way. Why? Because that remote and that TV will eventually call the nafs. It has to be put away. Now you decide what you have to do, and I'll decide what I have to do. And as a family, and my son sitting over here, what we normally do a few days before Ramadan, we begin to write out what our goals are in the month of Ramadan. And we set those goals in advance. And we should do the same. We don't walk into it haphazardly. Mawlana Zakariya didn't like the first night of Ramadan say, oh, I heard that they read 60. No, this was a little while before. He sat with his companions and friends and said what? They used to reach these goals, let's try the same. Now, the next thing that we see in Morton, Morton, he writes that many of his friends and well-wishers would send him mangoes and different types of fruits to eat. So what would he do? He said, I would subsist on a cup of tea, everyone has to have their chai, a cup of tea and some bread. And Mawlana Zakariya was the same way until he became older and his physician pushed him to eat more. Now, I'm not saying this is what you have to eat. But now I want us to go back to what I said just a moment ago. What did I say a moment ago? When you have a goal, there has to be the steps taken. If my goal, for example, is to read 5 Qur'ans this Ramadan, I cannot be having huge meals. Because if I have a huge meal, I need to spend time eating that meal. Then I need to spend time removing that meal from me. It's too much time taken away. If my goal, for example, is, for example, I don't have all my organs. I had a really bad accident years ago. I was in a coma. I was supposed to die. Alhamdulillah, I didn't die. But I don't have all my organs. So I cannot process and digest food like everyone else. That's why you see, like in the breakfast program, I don't eat breakfast. In the dinner program, I don't eat dinner. I can't process foods like that. When I was imam, I would only eat after Isha. Why? Because if I ate before that, I can't control using the restroom. And it's happened before. In the middle of the prayer, I had to leave the congregation because I can't digest like everyone else. I know my circumstance. I know my goal. I have to leave the prayer. So what do I have to do? I have to change my diet accordingly. And this is not a big deal. So in Ramadan, the next thing we see over here is that the people of the past, they would subsist on very little. In the i'tikaf program we used to run in Milwaukee where I was imam, if you were in the 10-day i'tikaf, there was one challenge everyone got. It was called the Dates and Water Challenge. You remember this? The Dates and Water Challenge. This is what we would do. No one was required to do it, but we would challenge people. This 10 days, eat nothing for iftar, nor suhoor, except for a few dates and some water. And we usually say start off with like 7 dates and have a few glasses of water, and then bring it down. And I'm telling you, the people who did it, the first day was hard. The second day was hard. But third, fourth day, they said, I feel great. Because you know what happens in Ramadan? Just like we need to sleep less, because Allah has completely infused us with this motivation, we have to actually eat less as well. We actually force ourselves to eat more. And you know what the proof of that is? If you go to these iftar parties or the iftars in the masjid, etc., you see just as much food in the trash as in people's stomachs. Because they normally would eat this much. They sit down to eat, they realize I can't finish it, and they don't know what to do, and then unfortunately throw it away, which we shouldn't do. But we don't need that much. A person actually needs very little in Ramadan to subsist. Now, I'm not saying you do this. What I'm saying is that the tradition in Ramadan is like, yes, month of Quran and month of pakora and samosa. That's not that month. I don't know why people only stay for this month. Yes, it's special. Yes, go ahead and eat it. If it makes your mother happy, eat. If it makes your wife happy, eat. If it makes your husband eat, etc. But be balanced. What happens, a person says in Ramadan, normally I eat 3 or 4 meals a day. In Ramadan, I'm going to switch. What do they switch to? It's no longer breakfast, lunch, supper, dinner. Now what is it? It is iftar, which is like a 15-minute ordeal. Then dinner, which is like a half-hour ordeal. Then the post-tarawih meal, and then the suhoor. It's the same thing, we just flip the schedule upside down. That's not the people of piety. Remember, there's 4 things. If you want to become closer to Allah, what do we need to do? قلة الطعام. We have to eat less. قلة الكلام. We have to speak less. قلة المنام. We have to sleep less. And what? قلة الاختلاط بالأنام. We have to interact with people less. These are 4 things. And the scholars say 2 help 2. When you eat less, you naturally sleep less. And when you hang out with people less, what do we naturally do? Speak less. When a person is no longer speaking to people, they start speaking to Allah. When a person... Yes. Go outside and do it though, not over here. When a person is no longer eating, then what happens? They wake up at night a little hungry. They go have a date, some water, etc. And they begin to pray. And this is what we see in these stories. SubhanAllah, next one. I don't want to go spend a lot of time on this. My goal is just to go to half hour, and I'm 3 minutes away from a half hour. Cool. Oh man, I lost where I was. Okay, now, yes. Okay, excellent. Mu'akhil Ahmad Saharanpuri rahmatullah, what did he used to do? It was his habit that he would pray awabin prayer. Awabin prayer in the hadith in Tirmidhi is to pray in sets of 2, 6 to 20 rak'ah in nafil. And he would do it throughout the year. He would do it throughout the year. And some people say there's weakness in the hadith. Yes, there is weakness. I will openly say there's weakness in the hadith. But to follow weakness in hadith for something that is for the reason of fadila, for blessing and virtuous acts, is permissible across the board, as long as it's not a false hadith, right? Anyway, and some other things as well. So, what was I saying? Oh, Abin. So they would pray 1.25 of their 1.25 juz every night. 1.25 juz every night in their awabin. Now, if you do 1.25 juz every night, by 27th night, that's a khatam of Quran. And if you do 1.25 juz in what? In the Tarawih prayer, which was a habit of many of theirs, then what would happen? They would do, by 27th night, another khatam of Quran. Then in their tahajjud, what would they do? 1 to 1.25 of Quran, a juz of Quran. So what would happen there? That's another, by the 27th night, that's another khatam of Quran. Then they would devote their mornings and their days to just Quran. So now we see why were they able to do 15, 20, 30 khatam of Quran in that month? Because that's how they would divide their day up. And it's interesting. You know what? I'm out of time. So I'm just going to stop over here. Just because, look, my job is not to speak about this for hours. If anyone wants the book, the PDF is available online. And I have a copy. I just want it back whenever you're done reading it. Please contact me. I'll happily give it to you. But my point is what? Read the stories of our predecessors. See the effort they made in Ramadan. Analyze the self and set a lofty yet attainable goal. And then work practically to reach it. Even if it means to cut things that are enjoyable in the month. Don't go complete Sufi and now you can't do anything, because then it'll be like a rubber band. You pull it, snap back. But make sustainable cuts for the month. And you will see by the end that it'll become easy. Now, as I wrap up, the hadith I mentioned, not the hadith, but the narration about the Sahaba from Ma'la rahmatullahi alayh. If we prepared this way 6 months in advance, when Ramadan came, it would be very easy. And this is why for next year, we should maybe consider starting this conversation at least 3 months in advance, if not 4, 5, 6 months in advance. Now, a couple announcements I was asked to make. One announcement is, MCC, as an institution, is recommending, can you put your coat on now? We're going to get going. Thank you. Is recommending that before the Fajr time on the prayer timetable, to end eating. There's a whole degree discussion about when does Fajr start, when does Fajr, at what degree. So just very simply, imagine the sun is what goes around the earth. Just imagine that for a moment, because that's how practically we look at it. This is all showing, that's what we do, zip up, okay? Thank you. So imagine that as the sun is coming up, before it reaches the horizon, it begins to send up light. حتى يتبين لكم الخيط الأبيض من الخيط الأسود من الفجر. When that black of the sky has a thin white line that comes beneath, that's when it's Fajr time. We can't see that in our environment today. It's just not possible. It's too much light pollution. So now we have calculative methods. But here's the thing, even NASA themselves, they don't know exactly when that dawn time is. It's really observational. So the scholars have pretty much established, based upon astronomical information, that between 12 to 18 degrees, some people say 12 to 19 and a half degrees, is when dawn will happen. Meaning, if you were to calculate the angle here between where the sun is and where the horizon is, when does that light come up? To be on the safe side, it is better at 18 degrees to stop eating. Why? Because it's only 20 minutes. But a full Ramadan fast, being compromised for 20 minutes, it's just not worth it. So the advice I would give to everyone here is you follow the scholars that you learn, with whom you study, and the imams of your community, no problem. But because I happen to be a youth imam here, I was asked to speak about this. We recommend 20 minutes before the Fajr time, stop eating. Stop eating at that point. You'll fall in the time where you know Fajr hasn't begun. If you wait more and more and more, there's some question. Now, no one should think, subhanAllah, I used to eat later, what should I do now? Just leave it. Whatever happened in the past, alhamdulillah. There's other opinions out there that'll support that. Stop eating then, and then brush your teeth, everything, stop eating. And then now, just prepare for your trip to the masjid. Or if you're at home, pray and make dua at that time. And then, when you reach that time of 15 degrees, which is 20 minutes later, then go ahead, pray your sunnah, and establish your fard. And if you're in the masjid, there'll be a masjid time as well. It's just safer. So scholars, my teachers have usually said, 18 degrees, stop eating, 15 degrees, start praying. It's only like a 15, 20 minute difference. At 18 degrees, stop eating, you use the restroom. If you want to shower, you can go ahead and do so. You change your clothes, you come out, bam, it's time to get to the masjid. And it's good to go, and it's very practical. The second thing is that the Fajr Jama'ah time is going to begin 20 minutes after the Fajr time. Yes. Yes. That's what's going to happen here. So let's say, for example, the Fajr time, let's just pretend it says 5:30. Let's just pretend that's what it says. So 5:50 is when we're going to pray in the masjid. Now someone might say, this is so much time. It's too much time for me to stop eating 20 minutes in advance and then wait 20 more minutes for the masjid. But this is why I mentioned schedules. If you come 20 minutes early to the masjid and read Quran for 20 minutes, for many people that's a whole juz of Quran. For the huffaz, that's like a juz and a quarter. For many of us who read slower, that's at least half a juz. Some people might be more, some people might be less. But this is the maximizing time. We shouldn't think, why is this oppressive? We should think, alhamdulillah, this was a period of time I didn't have before. 20 extra minutes that I can now get to the masjid and sit and read Quran, or sit in my car and read Quran, or sit in my home before I go to the masjid and read Quran. That's 20 extra minutes. That was a time that was gifted to me. That otherwise, I might have taken a nap and maybe missed Fajr, or I might have done other things at that time that would have been a waste. So we should look with the eye of positivity, and that's how the Prophet used to look at it. Finally, I feel like a hypocrite saying this while I'm drinking from this bottle, but this is right next to me. Finally, I've gone over 3 minutes. I wanted to end by 8. The masjid is making this effort to go green. SubhanAllah, there's two colors the Prophet used to mention in hadith that he loved. One is white and one is green. So going green, look, the earth is our responsibility. We have 2 responsibilities. مَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. One is worship, ibadah, and one is istikhlaf. إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. Istikhlaf, ibadah we know, we worship. But istikhlaf is to take care of the earth and everything in the earth. That's our responsibility from the 2 that Allah gave the children of Adam alayhi salam. Many of us, we make the effort to, don't scratch, Uthman, don't scratch. Many of us, we make the effort to worship, but in the meantime, we're destroying the amana of Allah that He gave us. So from this effort, we're trying to start small. What are these things? Rather than having a bunch of plastic bottles available, there will be bottles that are sold, water bottles by the masjid for $5 each, and it goes for donation purposes that we can fill up in the time of Taraweeh prayer. And all of us should, if we don't have our own water bottle, purchase that or bring our own water bottle. And you know what? I'm going to go a step further, and they didn't ask me to say this. I recommend, don't even bring a water bottle to prayer. 20 rak'ah is what, an hour and a half over here? We should be able to get used to an hour and a half without water. We should. Because what happens is we begin to, after prayer, we begin to sip like between the rak'ah. Now we're not doing dhikr. Go home, drink water. But there's a time and place for everything. And my recommendation is sometimes, when Umar radiallahu anhu used to see people who were practicing archery for jihad, and he would see them walk to the next site to shoot their arrows, he would say, run between those 2 areas. Get your body accustomed to discomfort. When he would see people only wearing shoes, he would tell them, walk without shoes sometimes. Get your body accustomed to discomfort. When he would see people only riding horses with the saddle, he would say, remove the saddle. Why? Because sometimes the discomfort will come. I'll give an example. Mufti Muhammad Shafi, Mufti Taqi Uthmani, Hafidullah, his father, Mufti Muhammad Shafi, Rahmatullah alayh, his son, his older son, is Mufti, he just passed away. Mufti Rafi Uthmani, Rahmatullah alayh. Mufti Rafi Uthmani, Rahmatullah alayh, he wrote in his biography that some days I would bathe with very warm water and some with very cold water. Why? In case something happens, we have to always be prepared. So for some reason, Allah put in my heart to practice that. Nothing great about me, Allah put it in my heart. When we moved to Zambia, we had to move around to different places to live while I was studying, my wife and I were studying. So the last home we lived in for about 10 months, we had no warm water. No warm water. So you had two options. One, to put the water on the stove, or there are often no electricity, so you put on the fire, you boil it, and then you take a shower, you do wudu. Or two, you just what? Just do what you have to do. I remember my family would always have to put the water there, for the younger ones especially. But for me, we spent so much time making this a habit that it was okay. There will come time where there's hardship. If we always supplant the opportunity of hardship with ease, we'll never be accustomed to a little rough time. So I think it's even better, just don't drink water between, unless you're leading the prayer, which I totally understand. But aside from that, it's okay. It's okay to be a little thirsty. If it distracts you, drink water, fine. And just sit in dhikr. Then have the water bottle in the car, go drink in the car, it'll taste even better. It'll taste even better. How many of you remember a time when there were no water bottles during Taraweeh prayer? Right? We can return back to those golden ages, inshallah. So I'll stop over here. I've gone 7 minutes over. I ask your forgiveness. Wa akhir da'wan, alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.